We are now in the midst of a new project launching on Terra known as Kinetic. Now, believe it or not, I recommend that you do participate in the current Lockdrop phase that is going on, but with a big caveat, and I'll explain. But for starters, welcome to Crypto Saver. Now, let's begin by covering the basics of Kinetic. What's the protocol all about? Well, when it fully launches, if you have UST, we'll use 1,000 UST for this example. You would head over to Kinetic, 1,000 UST, you would deposit it into their platform. From there, you can take a loan out for up to 50% of what you put down. So $500 is what you would be able to withdraw. Now, the $1,000 that you had given them, they're going to be taking that $1,000 and they will be depositing that into Anchor for it to earn a yield of 19.5%. Now, let's say in this example, you decided to take a loan out for exactly $199.50. You took that loan out. Well, after one whole year, if Anchor's yield is 19.5%, after one whole year, that loan that you took out, it's going to be repaid. This could be repaid. So when you head over to Kinetic and you want to take back that UST that you had given them, you can do so freely. You do not have to give back that initial loan that you took from them, which, remember, it was $199.50. So that's kind of the goal of Kinetic, that you would borrow money from them, they put that money to work, your collateral, and it repays back what you borrowed from them. But here's where things get juicy. Kinetic says, if you use us, we have a system in place where you wouldn't have to wait 12 months to pay back that specific loan. You would only have to wait 6 months, 7 months. Sounds a little too good to be true? Well, it might be, but we'll be explaining that in this video. Now, if you're watching this video, you probably know this screen already, right? This is the Lockdrop screen. We have a few days available for phase 1. You can really only deposit in these next couple of days. If the days are orange, usually that's only there for withdrawals, but you can deposit UST into this Lockdrop. That is the only thing you could be depositing. And right now, as I make this video, there is currently 2.6 million UST deposited into the Lockdrop. Now, with many Lockdrops, the biggest question is, what is Kinetic doing with this UST? And that's a very important question because this UST is really going to determine how big Kinetic can get, and more importantly, how stable their protocol is going to be. Now, for this next part, I'm going to need you to focus 100% because this is going to get a little complicated, okay? It's not going to be easy to follow, so I'll do my best, but here we go. Let's set up an example. Let's imagine that Kinetic ends up raising 100 million UST during this Lockdrop phase, okay? Phases end, they have 100 million UST. Kinetic will then take that 100 UST. They will go over to Kinetic, okay? They will deposit that 100 million UST into the UST vault. This would be the same vault you would be using when you want to deposit money into their platform later on in the future. So now they have $100 million in that UST vault. From there, they will take a loan out for 50%, the maximum, as we covered. So you would say, okay, they're taking a loan out for 50 million UST. No, not 50 million UST. 50 million kUST. Yes, Kinetic is going to have their own synthetic version of UST. So whenever you are taking a loan from Kinetic, you're never taking it in UST. You're taking it in a synthetic form of UST known as kUST. So let's imagine this. Collateral, $1 million. They just withdrew $50 million. Or just to make sure I got this right, $100 million, right, collateral, and they withdrew 50 million kUST. That's what's currently there. At this point, what they're going to be doing, they are going to self-liquidate themselves. Yes, this is going to be a function that's going to be available to you. This is when you're basically telling the platform, hey, listen, I do not want to wait until this loan gets repaid on its own. I also do not have the kUST right now to repay this loan. So do this instead. Use my collateral to repay that loan. And that is what Kinetic will do. They will self-liquidate themselves. So that 50 million kUST that they borrowed, it's supposed to represent 50 million, that 50 million will be taken out of the collateral. So 50 million USD goes to Kinetic. Now what's left? Well, the person handling this whole transaction right now, they're going to end up having also 50 million UST and 50 million kUST. That's what they end up with. Now, with that 50 and 50, they will head over to Astroport and they will be setting up a liquidity pool on Astroport with, you guessed it, 50 million UST and 50 million kUST, with the goal that kUST stays pegged to UST. So a portion of this Lockdrop, as you could see, is being used to create the AMM pool on Astroport, which is where most people are going to be swapping in and out of the kUST tokens. But what about that 50 million UST that the Kinetic Protocol received during the self-liquidation process, right? Because we never paid back the loan, right? We told Kinetic, hey, listen, we don't have this kUST right now, I swear. So use our collateral instead, right? We allowed Kinetic Protocol to come in and take 50 million UST from our collateral. Well, Kinetic takes that 50 million UST from our collateral and they put it into a different part of their protocol known as Phaser. Now, Phaser is the most important aspect of Kinetic for two reasons. Reason number one, it will help boost the repayment of loans. One of the biggest grabs that Kinetic offers, again, is the fact that they will beat the anchor yield. So it makes sense that it's a big deal. The second reason, which is probably more important than the first reason, it's to ensure that kUST stays pegged to UST. Think about it like this. On Astroport, why? Why would kUST be trading similar to UST, right? One kUST, one UST. Why? Why would it happen, right? You need a market mechanism in place for that to occur. Well, Phaser creates that market mechanism. So the idea is there's going to be a stable swap built into Phaser. That 50 million UST is going to be part of that stable swap. If kUST is trading cheaper than UST on Astroport, you would be able to buy kUST for cheap, head over to the Phaser on Kinetic, use their stable swap feature, swap your kUST for UST. So Phaser is basically guaranteeing you that, hey, we will always make sure that one kUST is always worth one UST. So because Phaser has a stable swap built in, that helps make sure that the actual liquidity pool that most people are going to be using is going to be pegged the way it should be pegged. Now, it is worth noting that you will have to wait a few days. If you utilize a stable swap within Phaser, it doesn't happen instantly. You will have to wait 3 to 4 days for the swap to complete, but it inevitably will complete. Now let's elaborate on the boosting of the repayment. So we know that this 50 million UST within Phaser is going to be used to handle the pegging of kUST. Well, Kinetic does not just want that money sitting there and doing nothing. So they will take the 50 million UST, or maybe a large portion of it, and they will also deposit that with an anchor. So that 50 million will be earning a yield. And that yield that 50 million will be earning, Kinetic's not keeping it for themselves. They're giving it out to their users. The folks that are taking loans out on their platform are going to be receiving parts of that yield from Phaser. And that is how you're able to receive a boost to your repayment. Because you're not only relying on your own UST that you deposited into Phaser to be earning interest, but you're also getting a boost from Phaser's UST that is being deposited into Anchor that's earning a yield. That's how the boosting occurs. Hopefully that's clicking so far. And one thing that you should instantly realize is that, well, okay, Kinetic has to just make sure that they control how much is being deposited onto their platform versus how much UST is within Phaser. If they really want to make sure they can ensure a yield way above Anchor's yield, right? Because they can't just let it loose. They can't tell anyone, hey, anyone who has UST deposited on our platform, you're going to get a boost. They can't be doing that, because if the depositor side keeps on growing, but the UST inside Phaser does not, you have to spread all of this yield across all those other deposits, right? So all of a sudden, instead of earning double the Anchor yield, which is the goal at launch, you might just be making maybe 0.5% above the Anchor yield if you let anyone deposit as much as they want, right? So they can control this function, by the way. They can ensure that, hey, as long as we only accept this much money on our platform, we can ensure that people are going to make that much more yield. Let's dive a bit more into the details. So as I said before, 50 million UST in Phaser is also meant to hold the peg of kUST. That when people come and they redeem, the kUST comes from Phaser. Well, the goal is actually for the yield from Phaser's UST to be handling the redemptions. So if Phaser is collecting, let's say, pulling a number out of my ass, is collecting $1 million in yield, well, as long as there's only, let's say, 200 million UST in redemptions per day, then there's 800 million UST left over. They can take that 800 million UST and give that all the users that are currently taking a loan on their platform, right? That's the goal. The goal is that the yield from the UST in Phaser is paying off for the redemptions. If that flips, that's a huge problem, right? If that flips, that basically tells us, well, first of all, I did not get an answer, or at least I didn't ask what would happen in that event. Maybe it crossed their mind, but that wouldn't be good. That wouldn't be good because obviously if they have to dig into their principal to pay off the redemptions, it means that there's even less UST that is generating a yield, which means it's going to be even that much more difficult to handle redemptions in the future. More importantly, if they're digging into their principal, that has also meant that for the past, whatever it might be, the past weeks, past months, they haven't been boosting anyone's repayment because they've been trying to handle the redemptions. And it doesn't look like anytime in the near future they would be able to boost anyone's payments since they're still dealing with this redemption issue. And that's where Kinetic has to be very careful, very careful. They cannot just let loose and let people deposit like crazy in their platform. Because by doing so, they are minting kUST. I mean, we covered this, right? That kUST is created when people want to take a loan out. If people deposit and they borrow, kUST is being minted. All of this kUST is entering the world. The same kUST that could end up causing further unpegging within the AMM pool on Astroport, okay? Which then ends up causing arbitrageurs to come in and use a stable swap on Phaser and draw UST out of Phaser. So Kinetic has a very fragile balancing beam that they're on right now. Not that they're on right now, but they will be on once they launch and everything. They can't just willy-nilly increase the caps because of that. Now for this next part, I think Kinetic hasn't fully thought this through yet. So we have a bunch of reasons, strong reasons as to why the UST within Phaser can start depleting. But there aren't as many strong reasons as to why the UST within Phaser should increase. I was given 3 reasons as to how it could increase. The first being self-liquidations. Going back a couple minutes ago when I spoke that the person that handled the Lockdrop, they will end up self-liquidating that 100 million collateral, and that 50 million went to the Kinetic Protocol, that self-liquidation function. Well, that UST, again, within that will go into Phaser. Okay, that's cool. But that requires people to self-liquidate. How often will people do that? I figure a lot of people will either buy up kUST if they want to close their loan off early, or they simply let their loan sit out there and they hope that their UST ends up covering it with time. But I guess if someone really wants to get their hands on that collateral, they would use self-liquidation. But again, I'm not sure how much you could rely on that. The second idea was protocol fees. Whatever the fees might be, the idea is, okay, if there's a bunch of fees collected, it will go into Phaser. Sure, but I feel like that's just going to be a drop in the bucket. And then the third one would be, I think under consideration, it would be the money collected from the next phase, entropy phase, when the token is being sold. That the funds from that can also go into Phaser. And that's cool and all, but that's also a one-time thing, right? There's not going to be that sale happening again. So that's where I kind of have an issue here, where Phaser's UST can be depleted over and over again. I mean, not over and over again, but it'll have many reasons to continuously get depleted with time that you have to continuously fight back at. But to replenish it, to grow Phaser, that's difficult. And if you can't grow Phaser, that means you're not able to accept more deposits onto your platform. So Kinetic might be stuck where they might launch and their cap is hit, because they plan to have a cap, by the way, when they fully launch. Their cap is hit day one, probably in the first hour between you and me, even less. And they might not open the doors for a while, simply because they need to really watch over the health of Phaser. And I just want to clarify this. If Phaser does not have any more UST in it, the protocol is gone. That is it. Phaser's job, again, is to make sure that kUST is pegged to 1. If Phaser has no UST, then the AMM pool on Astroport goes off peg, stays on pegged forever. That is it. If you have kUST in your wallet, it is likely worthless. It also means that people would not deposit money into Kinetic and take a loan out, because you're taking a loan out in kUST. Maybe they'll mint you a load of tokens, right? For you to withdraw it, right? Maybe they'll say, okay, it's fine if it's not pegged to 1, it's pegged to 5 cents right now. Okay, so here's that many more tokens, but who wants that, right? First of all, if you get to that point, it also means there's just so much minting of kUST that the unpegging will be even worse. So you have to get out of that ASAP, or you can't hold on to it. But you get the idea that the whole trust in the whole platform would just crumble. I mean, there's no reason to even babble about it. So the biggest number that Kinetic will be looking at is to ensure that the amount of debt issued on their platform does not go higher than the amount of UST within Phaser. Because we can basically look and say that, okay, if we have X amount of debt issued, that debt obviously was issued in kUST tokens. We just want to make sure there's not more kUST tokens out there than we have UST. Because if that flips and there's more kUST than UST, then you know that if all of those tokens got redeemed for whatever reason right now, you wouldn't be able to handle that redemption. Now in this graphic here, they basically show you, so we could look at the parameters they set up over here. Phaser funds 1,000 UST, right? We were using 100 million in we were using, was it 50 million in our example? They're using 1,000 UST. They put a debt cap of 800 UST. So they're saying, listen, if we have 1,000 UST in the vault, the most debt that we're willing to issue out there is $800. And since we know that people can borrow up to 50% of their collateral, we would only accept $1,600 in deposits in this example, right? You can see debt utilization ratio is 75. I mean, is 100%. Meaning under these parameters, this is the most amount of deposits that they would accept. Notice this also, Phaser yield, it stays constant, right? It doesn't grow. So this goes over what I just told you, where if you keep accepting deposits, then the yield from Phaser will be spread across more and more people. Now, as far as I know, they do want to launch with the goal that the debt cap will be 80% of Phaser's UST. And depending on how much is being borrowed, from that point on, that would determine the APYs. But it would be between 30 to 40%. That would be your APY. So if you're able to get money into Kinetic at launch, you can expect that you would receive 30 to 40% APY on your return for the time being. Unless, obviously if there's a lot of redemptions of kUST within Phaser, that's going to hurt the yield because we know that the repayment occurs net of all those redemptions. So let's hop back on the website here for Kinetic Money, and we'll just take another brief look at this here. We see the amount of rewards that are going to be given out. So just to clarify a few things. So yes, the UST that you end up putting in this Lockdrop, this is specifically the UST that's going into the Astroport AMM, which is going to be withdrawable. Okay, you can select how long you want to lock it up. So if we go to lock UST, you can select for as long as 12 months, but the minimum seems to be, 3 months. That's absolute minimum. And you do receive KNTC tokens, which is going to be the governance token, if you participate in this Lockdrop. So it is a way of kind of getting free tokens, right? You do have to calculate your opportunity costs and so forth. What if you took this money and instead you deposit that into Anchor? You get the idea, right? But this is a way to get your hands on the token, so that makes sense. Now, an important point, why I specifically recommend you to participate in this Lockdrop. It's not to get those tokens, by the way. It's specifically for this right here, Kinetic Vault Pre-Access. And this is the case for Phase 1 or Phase 2. I'll read this out. In addition to the KNTC, I can't even say the damn acronym, distribution, anyone who locks tokens into the Lockdrop will be whitelisted for early access to the Kinetic Vault. This will guarantee you to borrow kUST on day one before the initial debt cap is hit. 50% of that debt cap is going to be available to the folks in the pre-access that are whitelisted for that. 50%. Now, we saw from our examples, Kinetic will make sure to control how much debt there is in that platform compared to how much UST is within Phaser, because that allows them to, in a way, control what the APYs would be. There's going to be a lot of people jumping on top of this. I might even jump on top of this if I could somehow find a way to open up some UST, because I used almost all of it to buy Luna. But that is the only reason why I would participate. If you have a whole bunch of UST right now, whether it be just sitting in Anchor right now or in your wallet, I mean, yes, it does make complete sense for you to make sure that you can get involved and you can borrow kUST from them, because you will be beating the Anchor yield. They do not say how much you have to participate by. So from the sound of it, I mean, listen, we'll even do this live. Let's go back here. I got 95 UST. I mean, it's not much, right? So either way, what we're going to do here, I'm just going to put 10. And you know what? I'm feeling nice today. hold it for a whole year. Hold it for a whole year. Let's lock this up. Sure. Click on this. Submit this through. I think that as long as you put in anything, you're going to be whitelisted for the pre-access. And if you have UST on hand, as I said, yes, it seems smart to participate in the Lockdrop, so you can get your access to the pre-access. Now, I do not recommend just, participating in the vault if you do get a chance to do so and just kind of close your eyes for the next year. I mean, keep your eyes open on the platform. I just explained to you in this video that there's serious risks. There's serious risks as to why the whole platform can fall apart. So you want to make sure that things are kept safe. You want to kind of pay attention to, okay, what is Phaser doing? How much are they paying? What are the amount of redemptions that are being had on a daily basis? What's the yield that they're grabbing? Is their UST being added to the vault? Are people self-liquidating? What are the protocol fees like? You got to look at all these things to determine the health of Kinetic. Because if things start going sour, you want to make sure that you get your collateral back, whatever it might be. Just even self-liquidate yourself if you can't seem to buy your kUST back. But that is why I recommend you take part in phase 1. Phase 2, I'm not going to touch on too much. It's simply going to be a way for you to just buy K and CC tokens. And you guys know my opinion about tokens. I'm not a biggest fan of it, especially because there is going to be an airdrop release at launch. So you can expect a lot of people that have airdrops to start dumping, right? And I just wouldn't get involved there. But phase 1 sounds good. I like what I'm seeing so far. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, okay? But maybe they will not. But if you enjoyed this video, if it was helpful to you, if I gave you a better picture of how Kinetic is going to work, I would appreciate a thumbs up. Subscribe if you like Terra. And other than that, thank you so much for watching and have a great day.